The cursor blinked mockingly at me from my laptop screen at 2:47 a.m. when I heard my wife's voice drift from the kitchen, slurred with wine and venom. My friends say I should dump you and marry your brother, but I'm still deciding. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I froze at our bedroom doorway, watching Brielle lean against the granite countertop we couldn't afford, phone pressed to her ear like a lifeline to her gossip network. Her blonde hair caught the under-cabinet lighting, making her look ethereal, until she opened her mouth again. I mean, Jordan's got the paramedic thing going for him. Saves lives, you know. Owen just codes apps for small businesses. So exciting. She laughed, that tinkling sound that used to make my chest tight with love. Now, it just made me nauseous. I'm Owen Mercerly, 33 years old, and apparently married to a woman who discusses trading me in like a used car. If sarcasm could power the electrical grid, Brielle would light up the entire Midwest. But here's the thing about being underestimated your whole life. You learn to watch, to listen, to collect information like other people collect baseball cards. Brielle didn't notice me backing away from the kitchen doorway. She was too busy explaining to whoever would listen why my younger brother Jordan was apparently husband material while I was just, practice. I'd built my software consulting business from nothing, working 16-hour days in our spare bedroom while Brielle pursued her freelance design career, which mostly involved posting inspirational quotes on Instagram and charging desperate small business owners $3,000 for logo designs she knocked out in Canva. But Jordan? Jordan was the golden boy. Always had been. Star athlete in high school while I was getting my face rearranged in amateur boxing matches. Charming paramedic who saved lives while I saved failing databases. The brother who remembered birthdays and brought flowers to family dinners while I showed up with wine and sarcastic commentary. He's just so much more present, you know? Brielle continued, oblivious to my presence in the shadows. Like when Jordan talks to you, he actually listens. Owen's always got his head in some computer screen. I retreated to our bedroom, but sleep was impossible. Instead, I did what I do best. I investigated. Brielle's MacBook sat open on her nightstand, password protected, but not from someone who'd set up her entire digital life. The text messages made my stomach churn. Sloan, 11:43 p.m. So are you actually going to do something about the Owen situation or just complain forever? Brielle, 11:44 p.m. It's complicated. He pays for everything. Sloan, 11:45 p.m. Jordan would take care of you, and he's actually hot. Brielle, 11:47 p.m. I know! God, sometimes I look at Owen and wonder what I was thinking. Remember when he had actual muscles? I scrolled further back, finding months of conversations between Brielle and her best friend Sloan, dissecting my every flaw like I was a specimen under a microscope. My receding hairline, my dad bod that had crept in after years of choosing client timelines over gym sessions. The way I made that clicking sound with my tongue when I concentrated. But the real gut punch came in a group chat with her design crew friends. Brielle, 3 weeks ago. Owen's presenting his little app thing to some potential clients tomorrow. Wish me luck pretending to be proud. Madison, 3 weeks ago. Oof, at least Jordan's job actually matters. Brielle, 3 weeks ago. Right? Like, people need paramedics. Nobody needs another small business app. The app she was mocking? It had landed us our biggest client yet, a regional restaurant chain that paid enough for the down payment on the house she'd been begging me to buy. I kept digging, my programmer's mind cataloging evidence like a prosecutor building a case. Screenshots, saved emails, a folder on her desktop labeled J stuff that made me freeze. Inside were photos of Jordan from family gatherings, cropped to remove everyone else. Screenshots of his social media posts. And most damning of all, a draft email she'd never sent. Jordan, I know this is crazy, but I can't stop thinking about what you said at Mom's birthday party about Owen being too serious all the time. You're right, life's too short to settle. Maybe we should talk sometime when Owen's not around. I think you know what I mean. The timestamp showed she'd written it 2 months ago. My hands shook as I closed the laptop. 27 years old when we met, 31 now, and apparently shopping for an upgrade. The worst part? Jordan had no idea. My little brother, with his easy smile and genuine heart, was being lined up as my replacement by my own wife. I spent the rest of the night staring at the ceiling, listening to Brielle's gentle snores, planning my next move. By sunrise, I'd made my decision. If Brielle wanted to play games, I'd teach her the rules. The next morning, Brielle emerged from our bedroom like nothing had happened, wearing her favorite yoga pants and one of my old college t-shirts that somehow looked better on her than it ever had on me. "Morning, babe," she chirped, kissing my cheek while reaching around me for the coffee I'd just poured. "You were up late working again. The light from your laptop was keeping me awake." "Sorry about that," I said, watching her face for any sign of guilt. Nothing. Just her usual morning routine of checking her phone while stealing my coffee. "Big client presentation today?" She wasn't listening, already scrolling through Instagram. "Oh, Jordan posted the cutest picture from his shift yesterday. Look." She held up her phone, showing me a photo of my brother in his paramedic uniform, grinning next to an ambulance. 43 likes already, including one from my wife with 3 heart-eye emojis. "Great," I said. "Real heroic stuff." Brielle shot me a look. "You don't have to be sarcastic about everything, Owen. Your brother saves lives. And I save failing businesses. Different kind of heroic, I guess." She rolled her eyes and wandered into the living room, probably to post some motivational quote about choosing positivity or manifesting abundance. Meanwhile, I had real work to do. My office, the spare bedroom we'd converted when I started my consulting business, had become my war room overnight. I'd printed out the most damning text messages and emails, organizing them in folders like case files. If I was going to confront this situation, I needed documentation. But first, I needed more information. I called my mentor from the boxing gym, Frank Kowalski, a retired police detective who'd taught me that the best defense was a good offense, both in the ring and in life. "Owen, my boy," Frank's gravelly voice answered after 2 rings. "Little early for you to be calling, isn't it?" "I need advice, Frank. The kind you can't give at the gym." A pause. "The wife?" Frank had met Brielle exactly once, at a barbecue I'd hosted for my clients last summer. Afterward, he'd made a comment about how she seemed real interested in being the center of attention and asked if I was happy. I'd brushed off his concern then, but Frank had 40 years of reading people under his belt. "She's been talking to her friends about leaving me for Jordan." "Your brother, the paramedic kid?" "That's the one." Frank was quiet for a long moment. "You got proof? Screenshots, emails, recorded phone conversations from last night?" "Jesus, Owen. You sure you want to go down this road? Sometimes it's better to just walk away clean." "She's been planning this for months, Frank. Making me look like a fool to her friends, to our family. I can't just walk away." "All right then. Rule number 1, document everything. Rule number 2, don't do anything stupid that'll land you in jail. Rule number 3, if you're gonna play their game, make sure you win." After hanging up with Frank, I spent the morning doing what I do best, research. I created a timeline of Brielle's behavior over the past 6 months, cross-referencing her text messages with her social media activity and our bank statements. The pattern was damning. Every time she'd been out with the girls, she'd posted photos from places Jordan frequented. Every mysterious charge on our credit card corresponded with gifts that had mysteriously appeared in Jordan's apartment when I'd visited. The leather jacket he'd worn to our anniversary dinner, purchased on Brielle's card 2 days earlier. The expensive cologne I'd complimented him on at Mom's birthday party, same story. She'd been courting my brother with my money, and I'd been too buried in work to notice. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text from Jordan himself. Jordan: "Hey bro, want to grab lunch? I'm off shift and bored." Perfect timing. We met at Mickey's Diner, a greasy spoon downtown where we'd been going since high school. Jordan looked tired but happy, his dark hair still damp from the shower, wearing that leather jacket I now knew my wife had bought him. "Rough shift?" I asked, sliding into the cracked vinyl booth across from him. 3-car accident on Highway 9, then a heart attack call that went sideways. But hey, everyone lived to see another day. He grinned, that easy Jordan smile that made nurses swoon and apparently made my wife reconsider her marriage vows. "How's the tech world treating you?" "Can't complain. Business is good." I studied his face, looking for any sign that he knew about Brielle's feelings. Nothing. Just my little brother, genuinely happy to spend time with me. "Actually, I wanted to ask you something." "Shoot." "You and Brielle ever talk when I'm not around?" Jordan's eyebrows shot up. "What kind of question is that?" "Just wondering. She mentions you a lot lately, says you give her advice about stuff. I mean, sure, we talk at family things. She's my sister-in-law." He leaned forward, concern creeping into his voice. "Owen, is everything okay with you two?" The genuine worry in his eyes almost broke my resolve. Almost. But then I remembered the draft email, the months of mockery, the casual way she'd discussed trading me in like a used car. "Everything's fine," I lied. "Just curious." We finished lunch with small talk about Mom's upcoming retirement and Jordan's latest dating disaster. Apparently, his girlfriend had dumped him the week before for being too nice. I filed that information away for later use. Walking back to my car, I made a decision. If Brielle wanted to play puppet master with my family, I'd give her a show she'd never forget. That evening, I put my plan into motion. Brielle was at her weekly design meetup, which I now knew was really just an excuse to drink wine and gossip with Sloane and her crew at Vintage and Vine, the trendy wine bar downtown. I'd installed a tracking app on her phone months ago, ostensibly for safety reasons after she'd gotten lost coming home from a client meeting. She'd forgotten about it, but I hadn't. The little red dot on my screen showed her exactly where I expected her to be. I drove to Vintage and Vine and parked across the street, watching through the floor-to-ceiling windows as Brielle held court at a high-top table surrounded by her usual suspects. Sloane Heller, the ringleader with her perfectly straight black hair and designer everything. Madison Torres, who ran a boutique marketing firm and treated everyone like potential clients. And Jessica Kim, the photographer who documented their every move for social media. They were deep in animated conversation, wine glasses gesturing dramatically as they dissected someone's life. Probably mine. I waited until they'd ordered their second round, then called Jordan. "Hey, want to grab a drink? I'm downtown and could use the company." "Sure, man. Where at?" "How about Vintage and Vine? I've never been, but Brielle's always talking about it." 20 minutes later, Jordan walked into the wine bar wearing dark jeans and a button-down shirt that fit him perfectly. I watched from my car as heads turned, including my wife's. Brielle's eyes went wide with surprise, then something else, something that looked a lot like hunger. I waited another 10 minutes before making my entrance. The hostess led me through the crowded bar toward Jordan, who'd taken a seat at the actual bar rather than one of the high tops. Perfect. As we passed Brielle's table, I caught her eye and waved. "Hey babe, fancy seeing you here." Her face went through a series of expressions: surprise, guilt, then forced brightness. "Owen, what are you doing here?" Jordan wanted to check this place out, so I figured why not. I gestured to my brother, who raised his beer in greeting. "You ladies having fun?" "Oh, you know us," Sloane interjected, her voice honey-sweet with underlying venom. "Just solving the world's problems one glass at a time." "The important work," I said with a grin that didn't reach my eyes. Well, don't let us interrupt. Jordan's got some dating horror stories that require alcohol. I rejoined my brother at the bar, positioning myself so I could watch Brielle's table in the mirror behind the bottles. The women had their heads together, whispering furiously. Brielle kept glancing over at Jordan, who was obliviously telling me about his latest failed Tinder date. She seemed perfect on paper, Jordan was saying. Nurse, loves hiking, wants kids someday. But then she spent the entire dinner talking about her ex-boyfriend's trust fund. Bullet dodged, I said, signaling the bartender for another round. In the mirror, I watched Sloane lean over to whisper something in Brielle's ear that made my wife's cheeks flush pink. Maybe you're looking in the wrong places, I continued, raising my voice just enough. Sometimes the right person is closer than you think. Jordan laughed. What, you got someone in mind? Because your track record for setting me up is pretty terrible. Hey, I introduced you to Sarah Henderson in college, who turned out to be engaged to her high school boyfriend. Details. I clinked my beer against his. But seriously, you deserve someone who appreciates what you do. Someone who thinks being a paramedic is the most impressive job in the world. In the mirror, I saw Brielle's head snap up at the word impressive. Hook, line, and sinker. We stayed for another hour, with Jordan growing more animated as the alcohol loosened him up. He was naturally charismatic when he relaxed, telling stories about his craziest calls with perfect timing and self-deprecating humor. I watched several women at nearby tables steal glances at him, including my wife. When we finally left, I made sure to stop by Brielle's table. Heading out, babe. Don't stay out too late. I kissed her cheek, noting how she leaned slightly away from me, toward the direction Jordan had walked. Her friends watched the interaction like it was dinner theater. Drive safe, Brielle said, her voice distracted. She was already looking past me toward the door where Jordan had disappeared. Perfect. The next morning, I woke up to find Brielle already dressed and putting on makeup, unusual for a Saturday. Going somewhere? I asked from bed. Sloane wants to check out that new farmer's market downtown. Girl time, you know? I knew the farmer's market she meant. It was 2 blocks from the coffee shop, where Jordan always went on Saturday mornings after his overnight shifts. I'd learned his routine months ago when we'd briefly tried to establish a regular brother bonding time that had fizzled out due to my work schedule. Have fun, I said. I'll probably hit the gym with Frank. But instead of going to the gym, I drove to the coffee shop and found a parking spot with a clear view of both the entrance and the farmer's market across the street. Sure enough, Jordan emerged from the coffee shop at 10:47 a.m. with his usual large black coffee and a breakfast sandwich. And sure enough, Brielle appeared from the farmer's market at 10:52 a.m., walking directly toward the coffee shop like she'd just remembered she needed caffeine. I watched them, accidentally, bump into each other on the sidewalk, watched Brielle's face light up with surprised delight, watched Jordan's confused but pleased smile as she suggested they sit at one of the outdoor tables. I took photos with my phone's zoom lens as they talked and laughed, as Brielle leaned forward to touch Jordan's arm while making some point, as my brother's expression shifted from friendly to something warmer. After 45 minutes, they parted ways with a hug that lasted 3 seconds too long. I drove home and found Brielle in our kitchen, humming while she arranged farmer's market flowers in a vase. Good market? I asked. Oh, you know, same vendors, same overpriced organic stuff. But I ran into Jordan. He looked tired from his shift, poor thing. That's nice, I said, then added casually, maybe we should have him over for dinner soon. He's been working so much lately. Brielle's face brightened like I'd just offered her Christmas morning. That's a great idea. I could make that pasta dish he likes. She'd never made a pasta dish for Jordan in her life, but I just smiled and nodded, watching my wife dig her own grave one lie at a time. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait for them to walk into it. 2 weeks later, I had enough evidence to convict my wife of emotional adultery in any court that mattered, the court of public opinion in our small Midwestern town of Millbrook. But evidence wasn't enough. I needed a confession, preferably witnessed by people who mattered. The opportunity came in the form of my mother's 65th birthday party. Mom had insisted on a backyard barbecue at her house, the same split level where Jordan and I had grown up. The guest list included extended family, family friends, and a handful of neighbors who'd known us since we were kids. In a town of 12,000 people, reputation was everything. I arrived early to help set up, bringing the sound system I'd volunteered to provide. What nobody knew was that I'd modified it with a Bluetooth receiver that connected directly to my phone, a little insurance policy for later. Brielle showed up an hour after me, wearing a sundress that showed off her figure and carrying a homemade potato salad that I knew for a fact she'd bought from the deli counter at Whole Foods. She'd removed the label, but I'd seen the receipt. "Sorry I'm late," she announced to the assembled family. I was helping Sloan with a client emergency. Another lie. I'd checked Sloan's social media that morning. She'd been at a yoga class, posting inspirational quotes about living authentically. Jordan arrived right on time, looking handsome in khakis and a polo shirt, carrying flowers for Mom and a six-pack of craft beer. He made the rounds, hugging relatives and asking about their lives with genuine interest. My little brother, the family favorite. I watched Brielle watch him, saw how her eyes followed his movement around the yard, how she positioned herself to be in his line of sight. When he complimented her dress, she practically glowed. "Owen, fire up the grill," Dad called from the deck. "These burgers won't cook themselves." I spent the next hour playing the dutiful son and husband, flipping meat and making small talk while internally cataloging every interaction between Brielle and Jordan. The way she laughed too loudly at his jokes, how she found excuses to touch his arm or shoulder, the meaningful glances when she thought nobody was watching, but I was always watching. After dinner, as the sun started to set and the beer and wine had loosened everyone's tongues, I made my move. "Hey everyone," I called out, connecting my phone to the sound system. I put together a little slideshow of family photos for Mom's birthday. The crowd gathered around as I started the presentation on my laptop, projecting it onto a white sheet I'd hung between two trees. Baby pictures of Jordan and me, family vacations, graduations, weddings. Everyone oohed and awed at the nostalgia, but mixed in with the innocent family memories were screenshots. Text messages between Brielle and Sloan discussing Jordan's hotness factor, bank statements showing mysterious purchases, photos I'd taken of their accidental coffee shop meeting. The mood shifted as people realized what they were seeing. Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. "Owen," Brielle hissed from beside me, her face pale in the glow of the projector. "What are you doing?" "Just sharing some memories," I said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Like this text where you tell Sloan that Jordan would be a better husband than me. Or this one where you discuss my dad bod with your book club friends." The backyard went silent, except for the hum of the projector fan. "Turn it off," Jordan said sharply, stepping toward the laptop. "Owen, what the hell is wrong with you?" "What's wrong with me?" I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "What's wrong with me is that my wife has been shopping for my replacement using my credit card, and my brother is too naive to see it." "That's not," Brielle started, but I cut her off. "Here's my personal favorite," I said, clicking to the next slide. "A draft email where my loving wife suggests that you and she should talk sometime when Owen's not around, because life's too short to settle." Jordan's face went white as he read his name in the email. Around us, family members shifted uncomfortably, some pulling out their phones to record the drama. "I never sent that," Brielle said desperately. "It was just, I was upset about something I don't even remember." "But you wrote it," I said. "You wrote it, and you've been planning this for months. The accidental meetings, the gifts bought with my money, the constant comparisons. "Owen, stop," Mom said firmly, but I was beyond stopping. "Did you know, Jordan, that the leather jacket you're always wearing? Brielle bought it. The cologne you wore to Christmas dinner? Also, Brielle, she's been courting you like a Victorian suitor and you had no idea." Jordan looked stricken, his eyes darting between me and Brielle. "I didn't know," he said quietly. "Owen, I swear I didn't know." "Of course you didn't," I said, my voice softening slightly for my brother. "Because you're a good person who doesn't think in schemes and manipulations. Unlike some people." Brielle was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "Please, Owen, can we talk about this privately? You're embarrassing me in front of your whole family." "I'm embarrassing you?" The laugh that came out of me was genuinely incredulous. "Brielle, you spent 6 months telling anyone who would listen that I was a disappointment compared to my brother. You planned an emotional affair using detailed reconnaissance and my own money. But I'm the one embarrassing you?" Uncle Mike, Dad's brother, who'd never liked Brielle anyway, spoke up from the back of the crowd. "Jesus Christ, Owen. I'm sorry, son." That broke something in Brielle. She turned on Uncle Mike with fury. "This is between Owen and me. You don't know what it's like being married to someone who cares more about his computers than his wife." "So you decided to care about his brother instead?" Aunt Sarah shot back. The backyard erupted in arguments as family members took sides. Jordan stood frozen in the middle of it all, looking like he wanted to disappear. Mom was crying. Dad was shouting at everyone to calm down. I packed up my laptop and sound system while chaos reigned around me. "Where are you going?" Brielle demanded, grabbing my arm. "Home," I said, shaking her off. "Our home, the one I pay for. You can find your own way back when you're done explaining to everyone why you thought this was a good idea." I left her standing in my parents' backyard, surrounded by the wreckage of her reputation and the shocked faces of people who'd known her for 4 years. People who would remember this night every time they saw her at the grocery store or the gas station. In a small town, that was a special kind of hell. But I wasn't done with her yet. Not even close. The fallout from Mom's birthday party was swift and brutal. By Monday morning, half the town knew that Owen Mercerly's wife had been caught planning to leave him for his own brother. The other half learned about it by Tuesday. Brielle came home Sunday night to find her belongings packed in boxes by the front door and the locks changed. I'd spent the day consulting with a divorce attorney and a locksmith, both of whom worked weekends for the right price. She pounded on the door for 20 minutes before I finally opened it. "You can't lock me out of my own house," she said, her face blotchy from crying. "It's not your house," I replied calmly. "It's my house. My name on the mortgage, my money for the down payment, my credit that qualified us for the loan. You're just someone who's been living here. That's not how marriage works, Owen." "You're right. In a marriage, partners don't shop for replacements behind each other's backs." I gestured to the boxes. "Your stuff is all there. I was very careful not to pack anything that actually belongs to me, which honestly didn't leave much." She stared at the boxes like they contained explosives. "Where am I supposed to go?" "I hear Sloan has a nice place. You two can plan your next scheme together." "This is insane. You can't just throw me out because of some misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" I pulled out my phone and played a recording from the night I'd first overheard her. Her own voice, clear as day. "My friends say I should dump you and marry your brother, but I'm still deciding." Her face crumpled. "You recorded me without my consent. That's illegal. Actually, in Michigan, it's legal to record conversations in your own home. I checked with my attorney." The word attorney hit her like a slap. "You hired a lawyer?" "I hired the best divorce lawyer in 3 counties. Turns out, when you document someone's plans to commit adultery, even emotional adultery, it affects how assets get divided." I watched her do the math. The house, my business, our savings account, the car payments, all of it suddenly at risk because she'd gotten greedy. "Owen, please, can we talk about this like adults? We tried that for 4 years. You spent the last 6 months of it plotting my replacement. I started to close the door. Your boxes will be on the porch for exactly 24 hours. After that, they go to Goodwill. But my real revenge was just beginning. Tuesday morning, I drove to Sloan Heller's design studio in downtown Millbrook. It was a converted warehouse space that she shared with 3 other freelancers, all of them part of Brielle's social circle. I'd done my homework on Sloan over the past few weeks, and what I'd found was interesting. Her business was struggling. She was 2 months behind on rent and had lost 3 major clients in the past quarter. Most damning of all, she'd been inflating her income on social media while borrowing money from friends to maintain her lifestyle. The perfect pressure point. Owen! Sloane's voice was artificially bright when she saw me walk into the studio. What a surprise. How are you holding up? I'm doing great, actually. Thanks for asking. I looked around the space, noting the expensive furniture and equipment that I now knew she couldn't afford. Nice setup you have here. Thanks. Business is really picking up. That's funny, because I heard you were looking for investors. Her smile faltered slightly. Where did you hear that? Small town, word gets around. I sat down in one of her client chairs without being invited. Actually, that's why I'm here. I'm thinking about diversifying my business, maybe investing in some local companies. Sloane's eyes lit up with desperate hope. Really? That would be amazing, Owen. I could really use a partner with your technical expertise. I'm sure you could. I pulled out a folder and set it on her desk. I've been researching your financials. Very interesting reading. She reached for the folder, then stopped when she saw what was inside. Bank statements, tax returns, loan applications, all public record if you knew where to look. How did you get these? Like I said, small town. People talk. I leaned back in the chair. Did you know that encouraging someone to commit adultery can be considered intentional infliction of emotional distress? It's a civil tort in Michigan. The color drained from her face. I never encouraged anything. Really? Because I have 6 months of text messages that say otherwise. I pulled out my phone and started reading. Jordan would take care of you, and he's actually hot. That was you, right? Or how about this one? You need to make a move before someone else snatches him up. Sloane sank into her chair. Those were private conversations between friends. Private conversations that destroyed my marriage and humiliated my family in front of half the town. I stood up, leaving the folder on her desk. Here's what's going to happen, Sloane. You're going to publicly apologize for your role in this mess. You're going to admit that you encouraged Brielle to pursue my brother behind my back. And you're going to do it at the Chamber of Commerce meeting tomorrow night, where all your potential clients will hear it. I can't do that. It would ruin my reputation. Your reputation is already ruined. I made sure of that. I headed for the door, then turned back. Oh, and Sloane? I know about the money you borrowed from the Hendersons to make your rent last month, and the fake invoices you've been showing to banks to inflate your income. It would be a shame if that information found its way to the wrong people. I left her sitting in her overpriced chair, surrounded by the trappings of a success she couldn't afford, knowing that her world was about to collapse just like my marriage had. But I saved the best for last. Wednesday evening, I drove to Jordan's apartment complex. My brother lived in a modest 2-bedroom place near the hospital, the kind of practical choice that reflected his personality. Functional, unpretentious, honest. He answered the door, looking exhausted, still in his paramedic uniform from a day shift. Owen, I was wondering when you'd show up. Can I come in? He stepped aside, and I entered the apartment I'd helped him move into 2 years earlier. It looked exactly the same except for one thing, the leather jacket hanging on a chair by the door. You kept it, I said, nodding toward the jacket. Jordan followed my gaze and winced. I didn't know, man. I swear to God, I had no idea where it came from. I know. And I did know. Jordan's confusion and horror at Mom's party had been genuine. That's not why I'm here. Then why? I sat down on his couch, the same second-hand sectional we'd bought together when he'd first moved out of Mom and Dad's house. I wanted to apologize. Jordan blinked in surprise. You want to apologize? Owen, I'm the one who… You didn't do anything wrong. Brielle manipulated both of us, and I made it public in the worst possible way. I looked at my brother, really looked at him, seeing the guilt and confusion he'd been carrying since Sunday night. I'm sorry I dragged you into my mess. She really planned all of it? Every detail. The accidental meetings, the gifts, even researching your schedule to maximize chance encounters. I pulled out my phone and showed him the timeline I'd created. She's been working on this for months. Jordan studied the evidence, his expression growing darker with each revelation. Jesus Christ, I thought she was just being friendly. Because you're a decent person who doesn't think like a predator. But I liked the attention, he admitted quietly. When she laughed at my jokes or asked about my work, it felt good. I've been so lonely since Sarah and I broke up. That's human nature. She exploited it. We sat in silence for a moment, two brothers who'd been turned into unwitting enemies by a woman who'd claimed to love us both. What happens now? Jordan asked. Now you get on with your life. Find someone who wants you for the right reasons, not because they're trading up from their current husband. And you? I stood up, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. I'm going to rebuild. New house, new life, new perspective on what I actually want in a partner. Jordan walked me to the door. For what it's worth, I think you handled this better than most people would have. Better? I humiliated my wife in front of our entire family. She humiliated herself. You just made sure everyone saw it. As I drove home to my empty house, I realized Jordan was right. I hadn't destroyed my marriage. I'd simply revealed that it was already destroyed. Brielle had done the real damage months ago when she'd decided I wasn't enough and started shopping for my replacement. But there was one more piece of business to take care of. Thursday morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from Brielle and a string of increasingly frantic text messages. Brielle, 6:23 a.m. Owen, please call me back. We need to talk. Brielle, 6:45 a.m. Sloan told me what you did. This has gone too far. Brielle, 7:12 a.m. You're destroying innocent people to get back at me. Brielle, 7:38 a.m. Call me now. I deleted the messages without responding and drove to Mickey's diner for breakfast. The same booth where Jordan and I had sat just weeks earlier, back when I'd still been pretending everything was fine. Frank Kowalski was waiting for me, reading a newspaper and drinking coffee that was probably strong enough to strip paint. You look like hell, he said as I slid into the booth. I feel worse than I look. But you got what you wanted. It wasn't a question. Frank had been following the drama through the town's gossip network, watching my carefully orchestrated revenge play out in real time. Did I? I asked. Because right now, I feel like I just burned down my entire life to prove a point. Sometimes that's what it takes. Frank folded his newspaper and fixed me with the stare that had probably broken 1,000 suspects in interrogation rooms. You could have walked away clean, filed for divorce, split the assets, moved on with your life. Instead, you chose scorched earth. Why? I thought about it while the waitress poured my coffee and took my order. Why had I chosen public humiliation over private resolution? Why had I needed to destroy Brielle's reputation along with our marriage? Because she made me feel invisible, I said finally. For months, she treated me like I was just there, a placeholder until something better came along. And the something better was my own brother. So you made sure she'd never be invisible again. I made sure everyone in this town knows exactly who Brielle Mercerly really is. Frank nodded slowly. That's cold, son. Effective, but cold. She earned it. Maybe, but what did you earn? I didn't have an answer for that. Not yet. 3 weeks after Mom's birthday party, I was debugging code in my home office when the doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Brielle's car in my driveway, the Honda Civic that was still technically half mine until the divorce was finalized. She looked terrible. Dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, wearing sweatpants and a wrinkled t-shirt. The woman who used to spend an hour getting ready just to go to the grocery store now looked like she'd been sleeping in her car. "We need to talk," she said when I opened the door. "No, we don't. My attorney handles all communication now." "Please, Owen, 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I let her in. She stood in our former living room, my living room now, looking around like she'd never seen it before. "Sloan fired me," she said without preamble. "From what? You were never actually employed by her." "From the design collective. She said I was toxic to the brand after what happened at the chamber meeting." Brielle's voice was flat, defeated. "Madison and Jessica won't return my calls. My client list is down to 0. I felt a flicker of something that might have been sympathy, but I pushed it down. "That's unfortunate." "Unfortunate?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Owen, you systematically destroyed my entire social and professional network. You turned me into a pariah in my own town. I documented your behavior and shared it with people who had a right to know. Everything else was just consequences. Consequences." She repeated the word like it tasted bitter. "Do you know where I'm living now? In a studio apartment above the dry cleaner on Main Street. The only place that would rent to me month to month with no references. I'm sure you'll figure it out. You're very resourceful when you want something." That sparked anger in her eyes, the first real emotion I'd seen since she walked in. "I want to know why, Owen. Why you had to destroy everything instead of just divorcing me quietly." "Because quiet was never an option with you, Brielle. You made sure of that when you decided to make our marriage a public joke. I never meant for things to go so far. You wrote a detailed plan for seducing my brother. You spent months mocking me to anyone who would listen. You used my money to buy him gifts while telling people I was a disappointment." I stepped closer to her, letting her see the anger I'd kept carefully controlled for weeks. "Exactly how far did you mean for things to go?" She had no answer for that. "Here's what I think happened," I continued. "You got bored with your safe, predictable husband who paid all the bills and never caused drama. You decided you wanted excitement, romance, the thrill of the chase. And who better to chase than the golden boy brother who everyone already loved more than me anyway? That's not... But you're not stupid, Brielle. You knew that leaving me for Jordan would make you look bad unless you had justification. So you spent months building a case against me, making me look like the boring, neglectful husband who drove you into another man's arms." Her silence was confirmation enough. "The problem with your plan," I said, "was that Jordan is fundamentally decent. He would never have made a move on his brother's wife, no matter how much you threw yourself at him, so you would have had to escalate, become more obvious, until eventually everyone would have figured out what you were doing anyway. You don't know that. I know Jordan, and I know you." I walked to the door and opened it. "Your 5 minutes are up." She didn't move. "What am I supposed to do now, Owen? I have no friends, no job, no future in this town." "You could try being honest for once. Admit what you did, apologize to the people you hurt, and start over somewhere else." "Start over with what?" "You made sure I have nothing. You made sure you had nothing. I just made sure everyone could see it." She finally left, but not before turning back one last time. "I did love you once, you know. Before you became so bitter and angry all the time." "I wasn't bitter and angry, Brielle. I was just tired of being treated like I didn't matter by the person who was supposed to matter most." After she drove away, I poured myself a whiskey and sat in my empty living room, thinking about what she'd said. Had I been bitter? Angry? Or had I just been invisible for so long that when I finally demanded to be seen, It looked like rage. My phone buzzed with a text from Jordan. Jordan. Heard Brielle came by. You okay? Me. Fine. How did you hear? Jordan. Mrs. Patterson saw her car in your driveway. You know how the neighborhood watch works. I did know. In a town like Millbrook, privacy was an illusion. Everyone knew everyone else's business, which had made my revenge so effective and so devastating. Jordan. Want to grab dinner? I'm buying. Me. Rain check. I need some time to think. Jordan. About what? I stared at the text for a long time before responding. Me. About who I want to be now that I'm not married to someone who hated who I was. Jordan. For what it's worth, I always thought you were pretty great. That night, I dreamed about the boxing gym where I'd spent so much time in my 20s, back when I'd thought I could fight my way to respect. Frank had taught me that the best fighters weren't the ones with the hardest punch. They were the ones who could take a hit and keep moving forward. I'd taken a hit that would have destroyed a weaker man. My wife had betrayed me with my own brother as the unwitting weapon. She'd mocked me to our entire social circle, planned my replacement with military precision, and made me feel like a stranger in my own life. But I was still standing. Battered, maybe. Changed, definitely. But still standing. And for the first time in months, that felt like enough. The next morning, I called Frank and told him I was ready to get back in the ring. About time, he said. I was wondering when you'd remember that you're a fighter, not just a victim. I never forgot. I just had to finish the fight I didn't choose before I could choose the next one. And did you finish it? I thought about Brielle in her studio apartment, about Sloane's crumbling business, about the whispers that would follow them both for years in a town that never forgot its scandals. Yeah, I said. I finished it. That afternoon, I drove to the old Riverside amusement park on the outskirts of town. It had been closed for 5 years, but the county hadn't torn it down yet. The rusted rides and peeling paint made it look like a graveyard for childhood dreams. I sat on a picnic table and called my attorney to discuss the final divorce papers. Everything was proceeding smoothly. Brielle would get a small settlement, enough to start over somewhere else, but not enough to maintain the lifestyle she'd grown accustomed to on my income. As I hung up, I heard footsteps on the gravel behind me. I turned to see Jordan approaching, looking uncertain. How did you know I was here? I asked. Lucky guess. You always came here when you needed to think. He was right. Even as kids, this had been my refuge when the world felt too complicated. Jordan had usually followed me, just like he was doing now. I've been thinking about what you said, he told me, sitting on the table beside me. About Brielle exploiting my loneliness. Jordan, no, let me finish. You were right, but you were also wrong. He stared out at the abandoned Ferris wheel, its seats swaying gently in the breeze. She didn't exploit my loneliness. She exploited my love for you. I frowned. What do you mean? Every time she asked about your work, your hobbies, your problems, I thought she was trying to be a better wife. When she wanted to know your schedule, I figured she was planning surprises. When she bought me things, I assumed she was just being generous. Jordan's voice was thick with guilt. I helped her because I thought I was helping your marriage. The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. Of course, Brielle hadn't just manipulated Jordan's loneliness, she'd weaponized his loyalty to me. She played us both, I said quietly. Yeah, but you figured it out, and I didn't. You're not supposed to look for betrayal in people you trust. That's what makes you a good person. And what does it make you? I considered the question while watching clouds gather over the abandoned park. What did it make me? A man who'd burned down his entire life to prove a point? A victim who'd become a villain? A fighter who'd won a battle but lost himself in the process? Complicated, I said finally. Jordan laughed, the first genuine laughter I'd heard from him since Mom's birthday party. That's one way to put it. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, two brothers who'd been turned against each other by someone who'd claimed to love us both, The sun was setting behind the rusted rides, painting everything in shades of orange and gold. "What happens now?" Jordan asked, echoing the question he'd posed in his apartment weeks earlier. "Now we figure out how to be brothers again." "Are we not brothers now?" "We're brothers who've been through hell together. That's different." Jordan nodded slowly. "Better, maybe." "Maybe." As we walked back to our cars, Jordan stopped and turned to me. "For what it's worth, I'm proud of how you handled this. It took guts to stand up for yourself the way you did. It took cruelty, too. Sometimes those are the same thing." Driving home through the gathering darkness, I thought about the man I'd been 6 months ago, invisible, taken for granted, slowly disappearing in my own life. That man was gone, burned away in the fire of betrayal and revenge. The man who remained was harder, sharper, more willing to fight for what he deserved. He was also lonelier, more cynical, carrying scars that would never fully heal. But he was visible. He mattered. He would never again allow himself to be treated like he was disposable. Whether that made him better or worse than the man he'd replaced, only time would tell. For now, it was enough that he existed at all. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I was rebuilding my life one deliberate choice at a time. New house, a modest ranch on the other side of town, where I could walk to the coffee shop and the gym. New clients, word had spread about my technical skills, and apparently surviving a public marital meltdown made me seem more trustworthy to other business owners who'd been through similar hell. New perspective on what I wanted in a partner, which so far meant dating nobody at all, while I figured out who I was when I wasn't being slowly erased by someone who claimed to love me. I was debugging code on a Saturday morning when my doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw a car I didn't recognize and a woman I definitely did. Sloane Heller stood on my porch looking like a shadow of her former self. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by jeans and a plain sweater. Her hair was shorter, less styled. She looked like someone who'd learned to shop at Target instead of boutiques. "I know you don't want to see me," she said when I opened the door, "but I owe you an explanation." "No, you don't. Please, 5 minutes." I'd heard those words before, from Brielle, but Sloane's desperation felt different, less manipulative, more genuine. Against my better judgment, I let her in. She stood in my living room, looking around at the space I'd created for myself. Simple furniture, books everywhere, a boxing-heavy bag hanging in the corner where most people would put a dining table. "You've made a nice place here," she said. "Cut to the chase, Sloane. What do you want?" "I want to tell you why I did it." She sat down without being invited, her hands clasped in her lap like a schoolgirl called to the principal's office. "Why I encouraged Brielle to go after Jordan. Because you're a toxic person who gets off on drama? Because you fired me 3 years ago, and I never got over it. That stopped me cold. I never fired you. I never even hired you." Millbrook Chamber of Commerce website redesign project. 2019. You submitted a bid. I submitted a bid. You got the job. The memory came back slowly. A small project, maybe $3,000, that I'd completed in 2 weeks. I'd forgotten about it entirely. That wasn't personal, Sloane. I submitted a lower bid with a faster timeline. I know, but I needed that money. My business was struggling even then, and losing that contract meant I couldn't make rent that month. She looked up at me with eyes that held 3 years of accumulated resentment. I had to borrow money from my parents and listen to my dad lecture me about how maybe I should get a real job instead of playing around with computers. "So you decided to destroy my marriage?" "I decided to hate you. And when Brielle started complaining about feeling unappreciated, it was easy to point her towards someone who would make you feel as invisible as you'd made me feel." I sat down across from her, trying to process this revelation. My entire world had been torn apart because of a $3,000 web design contract I'd bid on and forgotten. "That's insane, Sloane." "I know, but it felt justified at the time. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I told myself you were this cold, calculating tech guy who didn't care about the little people you stepped on. It was easier than admitting I was just bitter about losing fair and square. What changed your mind? Watching what my advice did to Brielle, and to Jordan, and to you. She gestured around my sparse living room. You didn't deserve what I helped her do to you, Owen. Nobody deserves that. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or hidden agenda. All I saw was genuine remorse and the hollow look of someone who'd learned that revenge was a dish best not served at all. Why tell me this now? Because I'm leaving town. Got a job in Grand Rapids working for a marketing firm. Fresh start, clean slate, all that. She stood up, smoothing down her jeans. I wanted to apologize before I left. And I wanted you to know that what Brielle did, the planning, the manipulation, the systematic campaign to make you feel worthless, that was all her. I just gave her permission to do what she already wanted to do. That doesn't make you less responsible. No, it doesn't. But it might make you feel better to know that she didn't need much encouragement. After Sloane left, I sat in my living room thinking about the chain of events that had led to this moment. A lost contract had created a grudge. The grudge had found a willing accomplice. The accomplice had destroyed my marriage while trying to build her own happiness on the wreckage. And I had responded by becoming someone I barely recognized, calculating, ruthless, willing to burn down everything around me to prove I couldn't be ignored. My phone buzzed with a text from Jordan. Jordan. Want to grab dinner? Sarah's cooking for her new boyfriend, and I don't want to be the third wheel. Sarah was Jordan's ex-girlfriend, the nurse who dumped him for being too nice. Apparently, she'd realized her mistake and been trying to win him back for months, but Jordan had moved on. Me, sure. Mickey's Diner? Jordan, how about somewhere that doesn't remind us of family drama? Me, fair point. Your choice. We met at a new restaurant downtown, the kind of place that served craft beer and artisanal burgers to young professionals who were trying to convince themselves that Millbrook was cosmopolitan. Jordan looked good, relaxed, confident, like he'd finally stopped carrying the weight of other people's expectations. He'd been dating a teacher from the next town over, someone who had no connection to our family drama and no interest in small-town gossip. You look different, he said, as we settled into a booth. Different how? Less angry, more like yourself. I considered that. Maybe I'm finally figuring out who that is. And? Still working on it. We ordered food and caught up on the mundane details of our lives. Jordan's work, my business, Mom's retirement plans, Dad's new obsession with woodworking. Normal brother conversation that would have been impossible 6 months ago. I heard Sloane came to see you, Jordan said over his burger. News travels fast. Mrs. Patterson saw her car in your driveway. You know how the neighborhood watch works. Yeah. I took a sip of my beer. She wanted to apologize, and to explain why she did what she did. Which was? I told him about the web design contract, the 3-year grudge, the way resentment had festered until it found an outlet in my marriage. Jordan shook his head. All of this because of $3,000? All of this because people don't know how to handle disappointment like adults. Present company included? I laughed, surprising myself. Especially present company. Do you regret it? How you handled everything? It was a question I'd been asking myself for months. Did I regret the public humiliation, the systematic destruction of Brielle's reputation, the scorched earth approach that had left casualties scattered across our small town? I regret that it was necessary, I said finally, but I don't regret standing up for myself. Even though it cost you everything? It didn't cost me everything. It cost me a marriage that was already over, and friends who were never really friends. I gestured between us. It didn't cost me you. It almost did. But it didn't. and now we're having dinner and talking like brothers instead of strangers. Jordan nodded slowly. Silver lining? Something like that. As we finished our meal, Jordan's phone buzzed with a text. He glanced at it and smiled. Rebecca? I asked. Yeah, she's asking if I want to come over and watch a movie. Rebecca was the teacher, a woman who appreciated Jordan's kindness instead of seeing it as weakness. She made him laugh, supported his career, and treated him like he was worth her time and attention, everything Brielle had never done for me. Go, I said. I've got code to debug anyway. You sure? I'm sure. Besides, I have my own news. Jordan raised an eyebrow. Oh? I'm thinking about asking someone out. Really, who? Her name is Lisa. She runs the bookstore downtown. We've been talking whenever I go in to buy programming manuals. And she's smart, funny, and has never been married to anyone in my family. Jordan laughed. That's a good start. I thought so. As we parted ways in the parking lot, Jordan grabbed my arm. Owen, I'm proud of you for surviving all this and coming out the other side as someone worth knowing. I'm not sure I'm there yet. You're closer than you think. Driving home through the quiet streets of Millbrook, I thought about the man I'd been a year ago and the man I was becoming. The old Owen had been invisible, accommodating, willing to accept whatever scraps of attention and affection were thrown his way. The new Owen demanded to be seen, refused to settle for less than he deserved, and wasn't afraid to fight for his own worth. He was also lonelier, more guarded, carrying scars that might never fully heal. But he was authentic in a way the old Owen had never been. And maybe that was enough. Maybe being real was more important than being liked. Maybe demanding respect was worth the cost of losing people who'd never really respected you anyway. As I pulled into my driveway, I saw a light on in my home office. I'd left my computer running, code still waiting to be debugged. Work that mattered, clients who valued my skills, a business built on competence rather than manipulation. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was a life I'd chosen. Every decision, every consequence, every hard-won lesson had led me here. And for the first time in years, here felt like exactly where I belonged. The bookstore was quiet on a Tuesday afternoon, sunlight streaming through the front windows and illuminating dust motes that danced between the shelves. I was browsing the technology section when Lisa appeared beside me, carrying a stack of new arrivals. Let me guess, she said with a smile. Another programming manual? Actually, I was thinking about branching out. Maybe some fiction? Fiction? From the man who once told me that novels were inefficient information delivery systems? I laughed, remembering that conversation from months ago. People change. They do. She set down her stack and studied me with the kind of attention that still made me slightly nervous. What kind of fiction? Something with a happy ending. Lisa smiled and led me to a different section, pulling a book from the shelf. Try this one. It's about a man who loses everything and then figures out what actually matters. Sounds familiar. I thought it might. We'd been dating for 3 months now, taking things slowly while I learned how to be in a relationship with someone who actually liked the person I was instead of trying to change me into someone else. Lisa was nothing like Brielle. She was quieter, more thoughtful, content with simple pleasures like reading on Sunday mornings and cooking dinner together. She didn't need constant validation or drama to feel alive. She didn't compare me to other men or make jokes at my expense to entertain her friends. She just appreciated me. The concept was still foreign enough to feel revolutionary. I have to ask you something, I said as she rang up my purchase. Shoot. Are you sure you want to date the guy who publicly humiliated his ex-wife at his mother's birthday party? Lisa considered the question seriously, the way she considered everything. Are you sure you want to date the woman who thinks that guy showed remarkable restraint? Restraint? Owen, Your wife spent months systematically undermining your self-worth while planning to leave you for your own brother. A lesser man would have done something much worse than embarrass her at a family barbecue. Most people think I went too far. Most people have never been betrayed by someone they trusted completely. She handed me my receipt, her fingers brushing mine. I have. It was the first time she'd mentioned her own past, the reason she'd moved to Millbrook 2 years ago to start over. I didn't push for details. We all had our stories, our scars, our reasons for being careful with our hearts. Dinner tonight? I asked. I'll cook. You bring wine and stories about your latest impossible client. Deal. That evening, I drove to Lisa's small house on the edge of town, carrying a bottle of wine and thinking about how different my life looked now. A year ago, I'd been invisible in my own marriage, slowly disappearing while my wife shopped for my replacement. Now I was dating a woman who saw me clearly and liked what she saw. I had a brother who respected me instead of pitying me. I had a business that was thriving because I'd learned to value my own worth. And I had peace. Not the peace of ignorance or denial, but the hard-won peace of someone who'd fought for his place in the world and earned it. My phone buzzed as I parked in Lisa's driveway. A text from an unknown number. Unknown. I heard you're doing well. I'm happy for you. B. Brielle. I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. That chapter of my life was closed, and I had no interest in reopening it for the sake of her guilt or nostalgia. Lisa met me at the door with a glass of wine and a kiss that tasted like possibility. Good day? She asked, getting better by the minute. As we sat down to dinner in her cozy kitchen, I realized that this was what happiness looked like, not the dramatic highs and lows of passion and conflict, but the steady warmth of being truly known and genuinely appreciated. It had taken losing everything to learn what actually mattered. But I'd learned, and that made all the rest of it, the pain, the betrayal, the brutal necessity of standing up for myself, worth it.